Hi guys, Derek here at the Community Brew Shop. Just wanted to talk to you today about a question I get asked sometimes from new brewers. If you haven't done homebrewing before, you made your first batch of beer, how do I know when my beer is actually finished? You know, when do I move into the next stage where I can bottle or keg my beer? Seems fairly simple. There's not a whole lot of information on this stage, so I figured we'd put something out here just to address it. So what you're really looking for is your beer done fermenting in your first stage. The second stage will occur usually in a bottle, or if you keg it off, you force carbonate it. But I'll give you 3 tips here for new brewers. The first one, when you're watching your beer ferment, be patient with it. Don't try to rush the fermentation. Keep it at the temperature that's suggested by the yeast. So that's one of the factors that will play into how quickly your beer is going to ferment. The other thing that plays a role is also the beer that you made. So what type of ingredients you used can also, some ferment a little bit faster than others, some take a little bit longer than others. So just pay attention mainly to your airlock. So one of these guys here, or one of these like standard ones. I know some people will run just a blow-off tube out of something like this, and just a tube going into a jar of water to show, as the air pushes out or the CO2 gets released from the beer, how much fermentation is occurring. You can also look at the side of your glass bottles and see, if there's any activity. A lot of times you'll see the yeast will actually be rising up and down, and it will be quite active. So just keep an eye on those types of things. Don't worry too much about testing your beer very frequently. You're not going to check it every single day. Stick a dip tube in there, take a hydrometer reading. It's a good idea to do when it's towards the end of fermentation, but when it's in those early stages, there's no sense in doing that because it's not even close to being done yet. What you'll see is the activity will start to slow down, and you'll see a bubble just rise slowly and push through, and eventually you'll start, getting towards the end of your fermentation. One other thing you have to watch for too, if you have a temperature fluctuation in your house, that can cause the fermentation to stall and then start up again. So you may think that your beer is completely done fermenting, but then you go to check the gravity and you still have a long way to go. So pay attention to that. If you see activity increasing again, you don't have to take any type of sample. The reason I don't say to take a sample all the time, if you have a carboy or something like that, anytime you introduce anything into that carboy or into your fermentation chamber, that even if it is sanitized, you're going to put yourself at risk at introducing some other bacteria into the fermentation. So just be patient with it. Follow the instructions, whatever the recipe says. Give it an extra day or 2 if you have to, but don't try to rush things. Don't get it in the bottle too quick. Don't worry if you don't see a lot of activity at the start. Some yeasts take off a lot faster than others. So just be very patient at the start. When you see the fermentation slowly dwindle down, that's when you can start checking it for your gravity readings. Okay, so that's the first tip. Second one, just read my notes here. Don't wait too long either. I guess that's there's a bit of a window there where you have to watch. You don't want to take it off the yeast too quickly and kill the fermentation. You also don't want to wait for it to go too long. As the yeast dies off, it can introduce different flavors into your beer. Sometimes that's desired. Like I have 2 big carboys at the back here. These are both called Old Ale. They're a very high alcohol beer, and they're supposed to have some sort of aging flavor. So I've actually added oak chips to that, and I've actually done a secondary yeast addition to get the gravity to come down, so it boosts the alcohol level back up. So don't leave it sitting too long. If you're making something like an IPA that's supposed to be crispy, nice and tasty, you don't want it to have any sour flavor, that kind of thing. As the yeast dies off, it will start to give some off flavors. So if you leave it a day or 2 past when you should have bottled it or whatever, it's not going to hurt it. One other thing you can do to slow down the fermentation so you don't get the yeast working is to move your carboy or your fermentation chamber into a cold room. That will slow down the fermentation as well. The other thing it can do, depending on the style of your beer, if you're looking at something like a Saison, like I'm drinking here, this is an old one, you want these to be dry. A lot of times they're supposed to be dry, not full body, silky mouthfeel. They're supposed to be dry and crispy, that kind of thing. But if you're looking at something like a porter where it's supposed to be heavy on your tongue, that kind of thing, if you let this go too long, it's going to dry it out too much. So be aware of that as well. Depends on the style of beer, really. So pay attention to what style you're brewing. Follow whatever recipe you're going by. So that brings us, I guess, to the last point, the third one. The last thing is to go by your taste. So every time you pull a sample off this, try a little sip of it to see how it tastes. Maybe that's the way you like it. Maybe you like a something with a wet mouth feel, or you like a saison that's got a little bit of body to it, or maybe you like a porter that's extremely dry, or like I've done here, I've left this one too long, so now it's kind of soured a little bit, and I actually don't mind that flavor. It's kind of a unique experience as well. So make sure you stick to your final gravity targets, but if you go past it, you don't have to beat yourself up about it, because if it's your first beer, it's still going to taste good. You're probably still going to like it a lot. Maybe it's a new thing that you want to try out. Maybe you did it on purpose. Maybe you couldn't get to it for a week. But wait for the taste to get to your liking, and then you can kind of develop your own flavor profiles for your beer from there. So again, it may not be exactly as the recipe called for, but it will probably be something good. So just stick to your recipe as best you can, and enjoy. The fermentation kind of seems like forever, but just be patient with it. But also, make sure you're monitoring it properly. And also, one good thing to do every time you check it, especially if you're going to dip dip your robber in there and steal a sample out of it, make sure you write your gravity down. I usually just keep them on tape just to I'll just write it down as basically a log of how your gravity's going. If you see you check it twice in a row and it hasn't moved, maybe your yeast is done. Maybe you didn't get a good enough fermentation. There's things you can do from there. That's a little bit more advanced techniques, but there's things you can do to correct that as well. But don't worry, just watch your fermentation. Let it do its thing. It's natural, and that's what makes beer beer. So anyways, if you've been following us on social, Christian and I have been brewing a lot, but we're back into the orange phase where we can't really get together, that kind of thing. So we're each shooting separate videos, but everybody stay safe. Enjoy your brewing, and cheers.